Hello and welcome to the SBK World Cup Podcast. My name is Dan Levy and I'm joined as ever by Gary Pallister, Lee Sharpe and Tom Williams. If you're looking for the best odds on the World Cup, check out SBK. You can get £30 in free bets by downloading, signing up and betting £10, 18 plus, and please gamble responsibly. Now, first thing we have to talk about, of course, is the magnificent victory of England over Senegal in the last 16, a 3-0 win. Gary Pallister, what did you think of this one? I think the first thing to talk about perhaps is the amazing performance of Jude Bellingham. What was your view on the game?
Well, yeah, I mean, a standout performance again from Jude, 19-year-old lad. Looks like he's got the world at his feet. People talking about him possibly being the best player in the world within the next year or so. Who's to argue? He's playing with great maturity, having an impact. And yeah, it was in amongst what I thought was a really good England performance last night as well. They had maybe a couple of early chances. I think that was down to us giving the ball away in bad areas. But I felt confident, right from the get-go last night that this team were there for the taking. And that's how it panned out. Some terrific goals, terrific moves, some sumptuous football. And I think the positivity is reaching all corners of England right now.
Yeah, I mean, Bellingham really looks like a future captain of this side. You kind of saw the leadership during the goal huddles. I mean, he's just 19 years old and he was kind of leading a lot of that. Clearly has a great relationship with Jordan Henderson as well. I thought it was quite interesting what Phil Foden said about him, because he said, I don't want to big him up too much. And then about 5 seconds later, he said, I think he'll be the best midfielder in the world. So kind of bigging him up quite a lot, but it's kind of understandable really when you look at the way he played. I thought his, the runs for those first 2 goals, Lee, were just amazing. He really made those goals, and the maturity and decision making in the final third at that age is pretty phenomenal.
Incredible. I think his timing for the runs, his composure when he's under pressure. Very rarely gives the ball away. Likes to put his foot in and tackle, and can break things down as well as create. And I can understand why people are saying potentially he could be the best player in the world. He covers every blade of grass. He does every facet of the game to a high standard. And for a 19-year-old lad to have the decision making that he has is incredible. There's no one to touch him at the moment in midfield for me.
This one for kind of Lee and or Gary, but supposedly he and Henderson are very, very close. Does that really kind of help, that kind of thing, when you're in, especially when you're in a tournament? Or people always say you don't need to be friends to be good teammates and all that kind of thing. Does it help when you have a really good relationship with someone who you just hit it off with, especially in a tournament? I'll go to Gary first.
Yeah, I think it does help, because you have that bond, and you always say you'll go the extra yard for a real mate, won't you? So yeah, it's probably an unlikely friendship given the age that they both are. But I think he respects the stuff that Jordan Henderson does. You know what I mean? He does the dirty work, does the hard yards. And he gets people playing around him. He's infectious, isn't he? He gets people at it. And I think Jude Bellingham has looked at him and thought, yeah, that's how I want to be. If I'm, as we're talking about potential captain of England, somebody who can lead like Jordan Henderson is doing. I mean, he divides opinion whenever he's in the side for England. But, he scores last night. His performance was terrific. And hopefully it'll change a few England fans' mind. But yeah, it's an odd relationship, but I can understand where it's come from.
Tom, is it fair to say kind of Southgate got his tactics right? I mean, there's been a lot of negativity around him, especially after that dismal run in the Nations League, but he's got a phenomenal record in knockout stages of tournaments, or just in big tournaments in general.
Yeah, I mean, you can understand why people were questioning him over the summer, because the performances in the Nations League were very poor. There was that historic 4-0 home defeat by Hungary, which didn't exactly suggest that England were heading towards the World Cup as one of the favourites. But if you look at that period of Nations League fixtures, an awful lot of the big countries struggled. An awful lot of the big countries were having to cram in Nations League games at the end of what had been a very congested season for one reason or another. And yeah, as you say, everything that Southgate has done in the major tournaments that he's been at the helm for have shown that he knows what it takes to get into the knockout phase and then to win knockout matches. I think if there's a criticism to be made against him, it's perhaps that he doesn't always react all that quickly during games, sort of mid-game tactical adjustments. He's not really renowned for that sort of thing, but he's stuck by the players who have done the business for him in the past, despite being criticised for that. People like Harry Maguire, for example, people like Luke Shaw, who perhaps haven't had the starts of the season that you'd ideally want going into a big tournament like that. And so far, all of his choices have been justified. And despite all the kind of doom and gloom that there was around England during the summer, it feels like that feel-good factor that we associate with the last World Cup and then with last summer's European Championship is very much back.
I think I'm right in saying he's not lost a knockout game at a major tournament in normal time. I mean, the exits being Croatia after extra time and then, of course, losing the final to Italy on penalties. So it's a pretty impressive record. That could, of course, easily change against France on the weekend. We'll come to that in just a second. Good to see Harry Kane kind of waking up. I mean, he'd obviously had a couple of assists. He hadn't been played badly, but a bit like at the Euros for 2020, which took place in 2021, of course. He's sort of talked a bit about peaking in the knockout stages, and he gets his goal now in the last 16. It could be a different proposition this England team if Kane's going to start scoring goals, Gary.
Yeah, I mean, listen, take away the USA game where everybody was wondering whether he was fit enough to have started the game. He was one of quite a few players that night that looked lethargic, that didn't look at it, didn't look sharp, and left everybody concerned about England's future progress in the tournament. But I thought he was great against Iran, and then the last game of the league against who did we play last game? Wales. Sorry, I thought his leading role up front was really good. He looked really sharp last night and got his goal. So he's working his way into the tournament. Listen, he wants to score goals, but he has got other facets to his game that are really helping England, and he's a good foil for the lads that we've got with the ability to break open defences. So yeah, it's pleasing that for his own peace of mind, it's great that he scored a goal. But I think he's been looking sharp, apart from obviously that USA game. And if goals starting to come from him as well, he'd be a complete package for him.
Gary, we're going to find out who's looking sharp from Lee in a little bit, so don't jump the gun on that. Let's quickly talk about your man, Lee. Foden did get his start in this game, of course. A couple of great assists. I mean, it's easy to get carried away with how well Bellingham played, but I thought Foden was really dangerous and showed his quality in the final third as well.
Well, I think it was a really good team performance in general, to be fair. I think Phil Foden has to be in the starting 11. He's a bit, again, at such a young age, he's got unbelievable ability, but his decision-making just seems to be spot on. Very rarely gives the ball away, gets himself out of tight situations, and has lots of movement, so it's really difficult to pin down and to mark. So I'm a fan of Phil Foden, as you know, and long may his place in the team stay there. I love watching him.
All right, and Saka as well, completing the scoring. Of course, Kane, Saka, and completely forgotten who got the other goal. Who got the opening goal? Henderson. So Saka now on 3 goals in the tournament as well, having a great tournament as well. Sorry?
Who'd have had Jordan Henderson last night on their bet slip to be first goal scorer? I would imagine whoever did won a few quid, because I can't remember the last time he scored for England, but he's not somebody you would associate with breaking the deadlock last night, is he? And yet, he arrived there just at the right time to finish off what was a great move for England as well.
Well, it could have been that thing you said. He ran those extra yards because Bellingham was on the ball, and also as well, some suggestion that having Henderson in the side is a bit of a defensive move. But if you're playing him alongside Rice and alongside Bellingham, you've got license for those two both to go forward, Bellingham and Henderson, and maybe that is actually quite an attacking midfield when they get it right. Let's talk a little bit about the French, because they looked pretty impressive, I thought, against Poland. Obviously, Tom, some questions maybe about the back line, but Mbappe was just devastating, really, the goals he scored. What did you make of that French performance, Tom? It was a pretty impressive 3-1 win for Les Bleus.
Yeah, I think it was a game that showed the best of France in an attacking sense, but also showed some of the areas where, they're perhaps not quite as solid, some of the areas that England might be able to exploit on Saturday. Defensively, they have looked a little bit wobbly at times in the tournament. They're still to keep a clean sheet. albeit Poland were reliant on a slightly generous penalty award for handball deep into stoppage time. But yeah, there are a lot of question marks around Jules Koundé, who's come into the team at right back. He's not a natural right back, doesn't look all that comfortable playing there. Had somehow managed to get onto the pitch while still wearing these 2 gold chains around his neck, and had to have them removed at some point during the first half, which Didier Deschamps wasn't best pleased about. Rafa Varane and Dayot Upamecano looked reasonably solid at centre back, but they're a new partnership, have played very few games together. Theo Hernandez at left back is a real rocket in an attacking sense, perhaps not quite as happy, running back in the other direction towards his own goal, like so many modern fullbacks. And you've got this new look midfield of Aurélien Tchouaméni and Adrien Rabiot, who've been, excellent so far, alongside Antoine Griezmann, who's playing a little bit deeper, but all untested, when it comes to big knockout matches. But yeah, you get to the sharp end of the pitch, and as you say, Kylian Mbappe very often just gives the impression that he scores when he wants. And Olivier Giroud has come back into the team in place of Karim Benzema, and has scored 3 goals already. He's got the France all-time scoring record that he's been chasing for a long time. Ousmane Dembele has been in excellent form. I think that second goal in particular really sort of summed up what France were all about. You had Griezmann helping out in his own penalty area. You had the touch of Giroud, the awareness to take the defenders away from Mbappe, Dembele's pace down the right, and then Mbappe with the first of those 2 excellent finishes. So yeah, when they are attacking, when the ball's at Kylian Mbappe's feet, they do look terrifying. But at the other end of the pitch, there might be some joy to be had for England as well.
It's hard to know which was better, really, of those 2 Mbappe goals. I just thought they were both amazing, and he kind of faked out Szczesny, and he sort of, in both instances, he sort of was perhaps expecting it to go to the other corner, and it ended up on the other side of him. You mentioned Giroud. We could have a quick word for what is an amazing record: 52 goals for Le Bleu, all-time leading goal scorer. As we said the other day, probably going to be eclipsed by Mbappe in a few years' time. But it's an amazing achievement, an amazing career he's had, really, Tom. Especially given that I think he's a guy who was, almost gave up on football as a youngster. He was playing in low divisions until his early 20s. It's what a career this guy's had.
Yeah, a fantastic career. A real late starter, as you say, in top level football. Really didn't make his breakthrough until he went to Montpellier, won the title with them in 2011, 2012, and that's what sort of propelled him, into the big time and got him into the France squad. And for a very long time, he was seen as a bit of a default option. Oh well, Giroud can come in if Benzema isn't there, for example, and you had this sort of like, this sense that his and Benzema's destinies were combined, in that Benzema is clearly a more talented all-round footballer, but has had various off-pitch problems that kept him out of the France team for quite a long time. And a lot of people looked at Olivier Giroud and thought, well, he's lucky to be starting for France. There are better French strikers out there. He is the plan B. Wins the World Cup in 2018, but gets criticised for not having scored any goals. And despite that, carries on plugging away, and has always done the business. When he turns up for France, has actually got to France's goal record more quickly than Thierry Henry set the previous record. So it's not like it's just a reward for having managed to stick around. And I think you're also seeing, we saw this, in that game against Poland, how useful he is as a team player. Bringing in his teammates. Mbappe really enjoys playing with him. Dembele really enjoys playing with him. And having now ticked off that milestone, he'll be even more sort of relaxed going into the game against England on Saturday, which will of course have great meaning for him, because of his connections to English football. Yeah,
arguably could have had his 53rd goal. He scored that overhead kick, which was disallowed for, I think, a head injury. Let's talk about that game then, coming up on Saturday. France against England. I think it's the first time they've met in a knockout stage of World Cup. First time they met in a World Cup tournament for a very long time. And it's actually, unsurprisingly, France who are favoured by the odds. They have a slight advantage in terms of going through. Kind of 60-40 is how it's looking at the moment. Would you keep the same team for this one, Gary? I'm assuming you're not going to change anybody in that starting 11.
Well, listen, after that performance, you probably said nobody deserves to be left out, but Gareth takes it game by game and looks at the opposition and makes his mind up then. I mean, everybody probably had Marcus Rashford starting last night, and he put him back on the bench. So, listen, I think the big problem we've got, obviously, is the Mbappe question and Kyle Walker. I still don't think he looks up to speed. I think he has to play him because he has got the pace to be able to deal with him when he's fully fit. I agreed with him playing last night. I know there was calls for him not to play, so he'd be really ready for Mbappe. But I think he needs game time. I think he needs to be a little bit sharper. There's a couple of occasions last night when he got done for pace, and you're looking at that and going, "Wow, that doesn't happen very often to him." So if he's up against Mbappe, that could be a real difficult night for us. And that's the threat, isn't it? That's the main threat for France. He's leading goal scorer of the tournament. And that's the conundrum for Gareth, and whether he can get people around him to support him as well, because I don't think you can just rely on one person to look after Mbappe.
Yeah, I mean, there's 6 days between the two games. You think it's much better to play him if you want to play him in the quarterfinal. He needs to get up to speed. Lee, I'm assuming you wouldn't change anything in this 11, or is there somebody you'd like to see come in?
I don't know. It's a difficult one. I've always accused Gareth Southgate of being pretty negative and defensive, but I can understand him playing Henderson and Rice sitting in front of the back four, especially for the first half. We saw last night the first half an hour of games in knockout stages are generally cagey and people feeling each other out, and until the game opens. I think the first goal really opened the game up last night, and then you have got to look at Mbappe. I think everyone says if you stop Mbappe, then you stop France. I don't think it's quite as simple as that, but he is a massive problem. He does seem to turn it on when he wants to. I agree with Tom. He's just one of those players that seems to have another level, and when he gets a bit bored, he goes, right, I'll do something now to score us a goal or create one. He's an incredible player. But I also think England have got to go in full of confidence and backing themselves. I think that they've played pretty well throughout this tournament. They've shown what class and what talent they've got going forward, and I think we need to be on the front foot and take it to France a little bit, because I think our strengths lie in the attacking departments.
Yeah, I mean, if you stop Mbappe, then you've got to worry about Giroud, Griezmann, Dembele. I mean, there's a whole host of other threats in that French side. So France currently 1.73 to qualify, England 2.22. So yeah, as I said earlier, it's a little bit of an advantage in terms of the odds for Les Bleus. That game coming up on Saturday. Also in the quarterfinals, we do know that on Friday, Netherlands up against Argentina. Quick word on that, Tom. I'm assuming you saw the Argentinian win in the last round, and the Netherlands, of course, knocking out the United States. How do you see that one? Because Dutch, perhaps, I thought, looking a little bit stronger than we might have anticipated from the group stages. And Argentina, it's quite hard to get a read on this Argentine team. They obviously have Messi in their side. They obviously have a lot of talented players. Started with that 2-1 defeat to Saudi Arabia. And they do feel like a side that could creep into the kind of form you need to win a tournament like this. But having said that, I would be completely surprised if they went out against Louis van Gaal's team.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like a proper classic World Cup game, doesn't it? Perhaps the first real classic head-to-head in this knockout phase. You think back to that World Cup quarter-final between Argentina and the Netherlands in '98 at the Velodrome, and that fantastic Dennis Bergkamp goal. And I feel like both of these teams are kind of growing into the tournament. I mean, the Netherlands have looked pretty solid so far. I think what's really helped them is the fact that Memphis Depay is now back in the team and fit. Obviously scored the opening goal against the USA in the last 16. And I think having him there takes a little bit of the pressure off Cody Gakpo, because he knows that he's not the only player in that forward line who's capable of scoring goals. I think Louis van Gaal has found a system that suits him and has found the right personnel for that system. Everyone seems to know what they're doing. And I think having Depay as the spearhead will really help. But I think Argentina have been growing into the tournament as well. I mean, obviously, no one saw them losing that opening game to Saudi Arabia. It was a bit of a freak result. Argentina went ahead, had goals ruled out for the most wafer thin of offside calls, and had any of those gone in, they probably would have won that quite comfortably. But I've been encouraged by the response since then. I mean, they were pretty comfortable winners against Mexico. They were excellent against Poland in their final group game. Absolutely dominated them. Had a bit of a nervy end to the game against Australia when they were hanging on a little bit. But in the main, I get the sense that Argentina now know how they're going to get through this tournament. And you see some of those kind of classic Argentinian traits, the sort of defensive solidity, the kind of like the grit and the sort of hustle and bustle in midfield. And obviously when Lionel Messi is in the form he's in, that that gives them the ability to reach another level. Similar to Mbappe, he is someone who can just turn a game on his own. So yeah, I think it'd be fascinating. I think it's two teams who aren't perhaps entirely certain of where they're going, but who look like things are moving slowly in the right direction. So I think it'd be a really interesting match.
Well, one of them's going to be in the semi-final. The odds actually giving the advantage to Argentina here, 1.63 to qualify on SBK, and Netherlands 2.42. So the Argentine lineup is certainly one that you'd be intimidated by, and the Netherlands, they're not favoured by the odds. Let's move on then to Looking Sharpe. Lee, this is your section of the pod where you give us a player who's impressed you since we last spoke, somebody you'd like to pick out. So I'm going to open the floor to Lee for Looking Sharpe. Who've you picked out, Lee?
Well, I don't think I can look any further than Jude Bellingham at the moment. He seems to be dominating matches, creating a lot of headlines. I still can't get over how experienced and how he looks like he's been in the team for the last 10 years and he's only a 19-year-old kid. I really can't believe how good he is for how young he is. And like I said before, every facet of his game is so strong and so competent. I can't look past Jude Bellingham.
Pretty hard to argue with that one. All right, listen, we're going to move on to Take on Pally. This is Gary against Tom. Now, we tossed up the scores from last time. Gary had a 5-4 lead. And the questions that we had in the last round were Iran against the US, who would win? Tom had a draw. Gary had the USA, and Gary was right. Australia against Denmark, both teams to score. Tom said no. Gary said no. So you're both right in that one. Famously, of course, Australia with the only goal in that. And Poland against Argentina, over 2.5 goals. Tom said no. Gary said yes. And Tom was right. We've got 3 bets for you guys to tell us what you would pick. First one is Morocco against Spain. And it says winner. I'm gonna do that as qualifier. Who will go through between Morocco and Spain? And that's to Tom first.
I'm gonna stick my neck out here. Ooh. And I'm going to say Morocco to go through.
Ooh, I thought you were setting up a joke and you were going to say Spain.
I just think Morocco look exceptionally solid. Only let 1 goal in so far. 6 clean sheets in the last 7 games. And Spain were really impressive in that opening game against Costa Rica. A little bit less impressive in the draw against Germany. Even less impressive in that defeat against Japan, even though they still went through. I mean, they're favourites for a good reason, and they play fantastic football. But there's something about this Morocco team, so I'm gonna go Morocco.
I think that's not a bad shout, Tom. I have to say. So Tom's saying Morocco.
Thanks, mate.
Gary?
Well, I've got to go against Tom, haven't I? I've got, I've said a couple
of times. You
don't
have to.
That I've been really impressed with Spain. Obviously, the Japan result. I mean, it didn't. It was a bit of a shock, but. No, I like the way the Spanish knock the ball about, comfortable in possession in these hot sort of conditions. So I think they might wear Morocco down with their keep ball and eventually get the win. So I'm going with the Spanish.
Well, the odds also going with the Spanish. They're about 1.26 to qualify. Morocco 3.85, so like a kind of 3-1 shot. But I think that's a potentially good shout there from Tom. We'll see. Next up, England against France. Both teams to score. Gary, do you think both teams will score in this one?
Absolutely. I think it's, as we've talked about, I think it's both teams' strengths are in the creativity and the goals they've got in the side. So I can imagine that both teams will score quite comfortably. Just who scores the most.
Tom?
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Gary. I think. Both teams are very strong going forward, a little bit shaky at the back. I think the ingredients are there for a really exciting game. I mean, this is the kiss of death now, and it'll be 0-0 and go to penalties. But I could see this being a bit of a classic. There's just so much attacking ability. There are defensive weaknesses on both sides. So yeah, I think we could be in for an entertaining evening.
I agree with that logic, although the odds have it about 50-50. So there you go. And the last one is Netherlands against Argentina, over 2.5 goals. Tom first.
It's kind of hard to call because there have been goals in all the games involving these teams so far, and again 2 teams who are very good going forward. So I'm going to say I think there'll be over 2.5 goals in this one as well.
Okay. Gary?
Wow, yeah, I think it's a tricky one.
Good. That's the idea.
Yeah. I'll just for the fun of it, I'll say no. Edge
Good
me
on
bets. I'm going to edge me bets
Okay.
and just say no. Try and get a lead. A further lead.
Okay. I think the odds actually would favour Gary here. So
Really?
the betting market's saying that it's a bit more likely that there would not be over 2.5 goals. So we'll see. All right. A chance for Gary to extend his lead, perhaps. Also, another chance for him to extend his lead in Who's the Sharpest Pal. This is Lee against Gary. Now, we've gone for a bit of a Lee Sharpe special here.
Oh, I knew this was coming.
Career special round.
We'll load the dice.
To try and get him back into things. Yeah.
Just to help me out because I've been so bad.
It's only fair, I think, that for each question I go to Gary first. So the first question here, remember we've got 5 questions. The first question is, how many Premier League titles has Lee won? And that's for Gary first.
Oh.
It's going to be awkward if you don't know, Gary.
I'm trying to work out when you left, mate. Did you leave in 90? You left after the cup final, didn't you, in 96? 92, 93.
Don't answer that, Lee.
Sharpe won 3.
Okay. Gary says 3. Lee?
Correct, 3.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to know. It is 3. So that's a point each. How many yellow cards did Lee get during his England career, Gary?
He can't tackle. He won't tackle. He didn't tackle.
I didn't have to. I had players to do that for me.
He might have got a yellow card for having his shirt out or doing an Elvis fling on the corner flag or something like that over elaborate celebrations. How many caps did you get, Sharpe?
Happened?
8.
How many caps did you get?
Wait, that might be a question. No, it's not. Okay.
All right, okay. How many caps do you have? 8?
No, how many? You can answer that if you want, Lee.
Yeah, 8.
You want to go? I'm going to say none.
Lee, what's your answer?
I'm going to say none as well.
You're both right. It is.
Yeah.
What a well-behaved lad you were.
He didn't tackle.
Okay, in the 93-94 Premier League season, how many league goals did Lee score? That's for you, Gary.
93, 94. We played some good football that year. Ooh.
Were you player of the season, Gary? You were player of the season one year, weren't you?
That was the year we lost it to Leeds. That was 92.
2, yeah.
92, yeah. Yeah. It was a bit of
That can't be a question.
Sweet pill, that was. Losing the title to Leeds, but yeah, nice accolade. Sharpe, you would have scored. I would imagine you scored a few that year. I'm going to go for
league goals, huh?
That year as well. I'm going to go 8.
Lee?
League goals. I think it might.
93, 94.
I think it might have been. Was it 9?
It is 9.
Oh, do you know what? I was going to say
well
9.
done,
I
Lee.
was going to say 8 and 9. I was going to say 9. Damn.
But you didn't, my friend.
I know.
I'm afraid it is.
Yeah, it's a bit loaded.
3 to Lee.
Loaded this game.
It's a little bit. We'll balance it out. We'll do one on Tom's career after this.
Thanks, guys. That'd be great.
On the 28th of November, 1990, who did Lee score a hat-trick against?
Oh, that's an easy one for you, Pally.
Oh, God, that's easy. Gooners.
It's you, Lee.
Yeah, Arsenal.
I nearly gave that away, but I think you knew. Yeah, it was Arsenal.
Danny Wallace got 2.
So
who scored the other one?
4-3.
No, Danny Wallace got 1.
I thought Danny got 2.
Well, we know who got 3.
No.
Yeah, we know who got 3. And it wasn't me.
Danny Wallace got 1. Danny Wallace got 1.
It wasn't you.
Mark Hughes got 1, and Clayton Blackmore got 1.
Clayton got 1.
Let's not talk too much about Arsenal getting smashed by Man U, guys. No one wants to hear that.
Dan's loving this. This is Dan's favourite part of the pod so far. You should score 2 goals, Dan. Wasn't a total washout. Save face.
Question 5. Lee previously held the record for the most unbeaten home league games. Who broke that record this year?
You say that again.
Lee previously held the record for the most unbeaten home league games. Who broke that record this year? You all look very confused.
Yeah, I mean, most unbeaten. What in games that he played at home?
According to this question, Lee, does that make any sense? Does that sound like a record you held?
Yeah. I didn't know until.
There you go.
Until you got the answer.
Until it got broken.
Till I realised it was a stat and it was getting broken.
That's a strange stat.
Well researched this podcast, Gary.
Yeah. And obviously he knows the answer to that one as well, doesn't he? So, who would have brought that this year? It had to be would it be a Liverpool or would it be a Man City player? Would it be a Man City player or Liverpool? I'm
going to have to push you for an answer, Gary. But I think you were on the right track with your first line of thinking.
Kevin De Bruyne.
That was your second line of thinking. That was City.
It was
a Liverpool player.
No.
I'm going to give you another shot. It was a Liverpool player. Lee's fuming at this, bending up the rules.
Who would have played? Who can play a Liverpool player? Would be Van Dijk, unless I was saying that. Do you know what? Because he didn't get big when he
for
wasn't.
An answer, Gary.
I'm going to go Virgil van Dijk.
Oh,
Lee?
you're joking. Virgil van Dijk it was.
Lee
No
was the
way!
answer.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So you got to remember he was out for a long time.
Controversy.
You know what I mean? It's thinking, man, Sharpe. Thinking.
Can't believe you got that.
I have played an advantage there, and it's paid off big time for Gary.
Yeah, mate, Dan. I think I needed a little bit of help there. You know what I mean? It was all kind of.
You did. You needed a bit.
That quiz.
It's a bit of a tricky quiz.
Did well to get that out of there.
You did. So that, I mean, it's still a 5-4 win to Lee, so he closes the gap a little bit on Gary, and we'll have a Gary focused quiz next time out.
Oh dear.
And then we'll finish with Tom. We can all talk about Tom's books.
I thought we were going to do about my stellar football career.
That too. I'll do some research.
Sure.
All right, guys. Listen, we're going to leave it there, but we'll speak to you next Monday. Enjoy the game over the weekend, and I think all of us, apart from Tom, will be hoping for an England win.
Let football be the winner. That's what I say. Let football be the winner.
Exactly. Let football be the winner in a 3-line shirt. Thanks to everyone who's been watching and listening for tuning in. Do give us a like and follow on whichever platform you're watching on, and we'll speak to you next Monday the 12th. Enjoy the week until then, and we'll speak to you next time. Thanks again.